Hello, and welcome to the Drawn Deeper podcast. I'm your host, Catherine, and today we are going to answer the question, what is beauty and why does it matter? So this is a pretty big question, I think, and we're going to probably need a few different episodes to kind of go through this and unpack it and kind of, tease out some of the things that we're thinking about and what we're thought. So we're going to kind of walk through the two schools of thought, subjectivity, objectivity, which is two schools of thought on beauty. And then with objectivity, blah, 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 what that looks like in the sense of what properties are present in beauty in order to qualify or classify it in that school of thought. So I'm going to read out of the Beauty issue of Culture and Evangelization, which is a publication put out by Word on Fire. Great publication. It's thick, 164 pages of a lot of great content. And I found it really helpful to kind of, again, think about what is beauty and answer that one question for myself. When I was attending art college, and what I thought beautiful then is very different than what I think is beautiful today. I remember going to ACAD, or Alberta College of Art and Design, and remembering that nobody liked landscape painters. They were like crapped on, which is wild to me. I loved landscape painting and I still do some of that too. But also, like, I look at Bob Ross was an excellent painter. There's no shame to throw at that guy's skills. Very different than you'd say the experience would have been at the Florence Art Academy in Italy, where they train you more in the classical style. It was very not the way of the college that I went to. So some of that definitely plays into a role, and we'll kind of discuss and tease some of that out. This may be a video that has more than one part, because as I grow and as I change and as I read more, because I'm constantly trying to read and grow my own mind to understand more about beauty, we may have to come back to this topic and actually talk a little bit more about what is up and what is going on. So I'm going to start with this beautiful kind of breakdown that Dr. Robert J. Spritzer wrote in his article in this magazine. So bear with me, I got to read out of a book. And there's this word in here that I've literally, I've had to practice, okay, on YouTube how to say it right. So hopefully don't judge me. So number one, what makes nature beautiful? The world of philosophical aesthetics is divided between two camps. One, beauty is mostly subjective perception in the eye of the beholder. And some of the people that had that thought was David Hume, John Locke, Immanuel Kant, and John Dewey. The second school of thought is beauty is mostly objective, intrinsic to the beautiful object. The ones that had that thought were Plato, Aristotle, Augustine, Aquinas, and Jacques Maritain. I think I said that right. Some philosophers, such as Immanuel Kant, have a quasi-objectiveness component, universal purposiveness. That's the word I'm practicing, but fall mostly into the subjectivist camp. And he goes on to say he subscribes to the objective view of beauty. And then in this view, the objectivity quality of beauty consists in four properties. So one, unity and symmetry, so due proportion, and or harmony, blending amidst different visible forms and note. Two is this word I've been practicing, purposiveness, and teleology is what it says in parentheses, in nature, which we perceive as good, and in virtue of that good as beautiful. Number three is a whimsical dimension of nature that is surprisingly extravagant and awe-inspiring. So the idea that beauty can be shocking in how beautiful it is. So again, when you climb a mountain and you reach its peak and you take in that vast view, it's like breathtaking. Or when you walk into a cathedral, like when I walked into the older basilica at Our Lady Guadalupe, and I just gasped because it was like, oh my gosh, like, where am I? Like, this is so beautiful. So shock value almost. So it points to an intentionality within the ordered, symmetrical, purposive, and extravagant dimensions of nature that is not only good, but seeks to please us and draw us into itself. And number four, a grandeur in both nature and natural things that points beyond greatness to what might be called ultimate majesty and glory. Though in one sense it is overwhelming, it is also reminiscent of home, an ultimate home where we fit in and we are freed from alienation in the midst of what Plato called beauty itself. So thank you, Father Robert J. Spritzer, for breaking that down for us, because I think that's quite beautiful. I really do love that. And it made me think of music and different things like that about what is beautiful in that regard. And when I think of beauty, I know I was, as we've kind of grown our little community online and whatnot, I had a lady who posted and she's like, I always write beauty with a capital B. And I was like, oh, I like that. And she's like, because beauty is God. And I'm like, yep, I'm with you on that 100%. And it's like, and when it talks about that shock value or that awe-inspiring that draws you into itself, it's like beauty is drawing you closer to God because God is beautiful. And, it's written within the Bible. God in the book of wisdom is called the author of beauty. And I love that. It is good. And so when we kind of like tease out this idea, okay, what is beauty? Okay, we've got a formula, but now why does it matter? What is important about beauty? And when you look at our world today, where so much beauty has been removed, like you look even at, let's just look at like home architecture to start. So let's say 100 years ago, because we live in Victoria, BC, so there's lots of like what they call character homes, so homes that are older, where you have these beautiful like curved archways and like little stained glass windows that are present and different ornate details that would be in the ceilings, in the walls, in the door frames, on the faucets. And like there's definitely a movement. I mean, maybe it's just my corner of the internet that's influenced by my algorithm, where you feel like people are really kind of drawing back to that more aesthetic look because I don't know. I feel like my soul rests easier when I'm not in a sterilized environment. And I feel like so much of what we are in right now is so sterilized, including our modern churches. We have so many whitewashed walls where we're so removed from the beautiful. And I mean, I think we've been like that for decades now. And, probably close to almost 100 years where it's kind of like that modern movement of like, let's just go here. It's more about efficiency. It's more about being proficient. We don't need aesthetics. We don't need things to be beautiful. And I had a friend recently that showed me about this hospital. It's older. I don't even know if it's still functioning, but this hospital had these gorgeous ornate details. The ceilings were like mosaics. The walls were in these beautiful colors. And I was like, wow, like what a contrast. If spent any time in any hospital, I mean, in my lifetime for sure, you have maybe some stagnant art. Hopefully some hospitals have started to bring in at least some art you could like buy off the walls. But like this hospital, I mean, it was drenched in beauty. And it was because the person that created it was like, I believe that beauty helps us heal. And I believe that beauty is important, not only to like the mind and soul, but like to the body as well. And I think that is true. And there's this movement of being like, go outside. I mean, how did we ever lose that? I don't know, but like be out in nature because nature's beauty for sure. Like you look at, oh my gosh, I could get on about flowers and garden centers all day because like there's just that natural beauty element. And I think we've removed ourselves so far from it that now it's like, oh my gosh. But I do feel there's a movement back towards it. So why it matters to our hearts, it matters to our souls, and it matters because it draws us closer to God. And when you have a society that's pulled away from God, which we definitely are living in, then you see the chaos that runs amok. And I believe that if we were to, step back for a minute and be like, okay, why are we building everything to look like a box? And why is everything so sharp and edged? Because you look at nature and very few things are square. Like everything is very fluid and organic in the shaping of it. And like, like the spirals and the way that like a leaf's veins run through and how that almost like mimics our own bodies. When you look at a delta or an estuary and how it all runs out in those veins or the veins in a leaf. And then you actually look at, I think it's a CT scan of our lungs and how similar that those veins bleed out like that. And I think that is intentional. Or, I've seen it where it's like certain foods and vegetables are actually good for your body based on what they look like and how they're similar to our human body. So like celery is good for your bones, or citrus can be good for your breast health because when you cut it in half, it actually looks very similar to what the mammary glands look like inside your breasts. And it's like, what? Like, how is that? And so there's these elements of nature that are layered into us as human beings. And I think that we've come so far. Everything is so insulated, like our shoes and our homes, and nothing is touching the earth anymore. And like in Victoria in particular, like we're lucky we have a lot of preserved old architecture, a lot of old character homes. But anything that's new, it's all condo buildings. So you're not touching the earth at all, because now you're in a big steel structure of concrete and steel and glass, and it's cold. And there's no one has real hardwood floors anymore unless they're really old or really, really rich, because like everything is now vinyl that is made to look like wood. So you're missing all these natural elements that our bodies, I believe, need. And so it matters because we're supposed to be in it. Like we're supposed to be part of nature. We're supposed to be part of beauty, and we need to be in union with God. And we could do that through beauty. And I've very slowly, and I mean within the last 6 months, been learning about transcendentals. I didn't even know this was a thing. But as I was, starting up our company with Drawn Publications, I mean, our original title was Truth and Beauty. And I had somebody point out, they're like, well, you can't have two transcendentals without the other one. You need all three. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so as I have been kind of teasing out and learning a little bit more about the transcendentals, and, there's different phases and different times and different people that are drawn to those in different ways. So some people are really heavy in theology and learning the truth and having the truth be what draws them in, or the goodness. And then there's some that are drawn to beauty. So for me as an artist, I've always been drawn through beauty. Like even as a young kid, I just remember admiring little beautiful things. And I still do today, obviously. And I probably more so now, where I'm like getting a little obsessive, like slow your roll, Catherine, about like wanting to make things more aesthetically pleasing and kind of trying to get rid of that whitewash sterilization in our home, in our world, and just trying to create more beauty in our places. Because I think, there's this whole idea that like everything's got to be painted taupe and beige and painter's gray, and like this sterilization in our own homes, where it's like you should love where you live, and you should enjoy the colors of your house, and you should like it. It shouldn't be about resale value. Plus it's paint, you can just repaint it. But I believe that people are more, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's just me, but I think people are more drawn to things that are beautiful. I do. I really do think that for most people don't be like, ew, a sunset. Like, I think most people would be like, dang, look at those colors, like beautiful. And so, yeah, I feel like we need to get back to beauty. We need to return this idea that beauty is important. It's not an aesthetic that is not necessary. It is very necessary, because it's important because it draws us to God, but it's also important because it speaks to our hearts through our eyes, and it teaches us to slow down. And I think that's the biggest thing. How many times have you gone through life, or you've driven on a road and you don't notice the waterfalls coming down the side? I mean, I live in BC. We have a lot of waterfalls. We have a lot of mountains. How often do you not stop to notice the wildflowers, the foxglove glowing off the side of the road, or the rose bush that's just sitting there in full bloom, or an apple tree that's got blossoms with bees flying through them? Like, in order to admire and appreciate beauty, we have to slow down. And so much of our world is not about that. It is all about like rush, 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 rush. And I just finished reading a book. It was called The Midnight Train. I can't remember who wrote it. It was a story about this man who, had these elements of beauty in his life in the beginning. He was reading, and he had this beautiful wife, and he loved her very deeply. And then through the story, I don't want to give too much away in case you're going to read it, but he ends up dying. And then the whole idea is that like he goes on this midnight train, and then he goes back through his life and looks at it, and he realizes where he messes up, and realized that like it no longer became about the people that he loved or the things that he loved. It all became about gains. Like, I need to be better. I need to expand this bookshop. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And at the sacrifice of everything else. And it was really thought-provoking in a way. It's like, if I were to go on the midnight train and go back through my life, I mean, it's not very long life at this point, but like, where would I see where I've made those turns? And if I had the ability to go back and change it, how would I change it? I mean, obviously time travel is not a thing, but like, it gave me some thoughts about like, where do I stop to appreciate the things that are good and true and beautiful in my own life, and where can I adjust because that is out of line. And so it was a good book in that regard, that I really liked how it kind of shifted. And in the end, I won't tell you what happens, but it did end up with a very good ending. And it was very beautiful, but it was so interesting to think about like how many people have made that sacrifice where it just became all about gains, all about business, all about money, all about getting a bigger house, or all about this. And in the dust, you leave what's truly, really important, which is the people you love and those slow moments. So like, we need to slow down. We need to appreciate beauty, and we need to like pause to love. And this is going a little more philosophical than I expected, but I think that this is all tied together somewhere. But I really do believe that in order to admire beauty and appreciate it, we have to slow down. Beauty is not just in nature. It's not just in architecture. It's not just in music. It's in people. When I was reading the 4 components, like symmetry, like people are generally symmetrical. And there's that element of surprise. And again, people are beautiful because they're also created in God's image. And when you slow down and you choose and work to see it, you can see it in everybody. And that's, people will be like, what are you talking about? How can some of these people that are doing these horrible things be beautiful? That's a great question. And I think that we have to kind of, again, stop, pause, slow down, and figure out, well, God still made them. God still loves them, even if they're doing some pretty crappy things. So why can't we do the same? Because that's truly, I think, what we're really called to do, is love everybody. And that has nothing to do with beauty, or maybe it has everything to do with beauty. And maybe that's just part of it, right? We need to slow down, love, appreciate the flowers, as well as our neighbors, as well as everybody else. I don't know. Anyways, that's that's where we're going today. So Thomas Aquinas also, who is one of the ones that was on the school of thought of objectivity, had 3 elements that needed to be present for beauty. So looking for these when encountering art would be clarity, proportion, and integrity. So again, like proportion to me signs in with unity and symmetry. And you could see that because when you look at some of the more modern art, like let's say Picasso with his like craziness, it's harder to see the beauty in the sense of like, I don't know, aesthetic beauty. I'm not dissing Picasso, but it's also really fascinating to see where he studied in the beginning as a much more surrealist artist, and then, or realist, sorry, not surrealist, that would be Dali. And then how he kind of morphed into this very modern and very abstracted kind of artist. And I think there is a place for abstract art. And as myself on my own art journey, like I went from being very abstract because I was like, oh, I don't know how to paint. Like, I'm just going to throw paint around and make these weird things and justify it with some BS artist statement. And that's where I was. And then like the journey slowly came where I stopped painting completely, had kids, got some mental health struggles, and then slowly teased back out of art. And then through that grew my faith. And with that, encountered God in my art in the sense of like, okay, I've come back to painting. I believe this is part of my healing journey. This is part of my purpose. And in being a creative, because we are all creative, just to point out, but in finding your form of creativity, because that's important, you are able to kind of do God's work to the best of what you were created to do, I believe. So in doing this, like in finding my way back to that, I became more of a realistic painter. So I started to paint things that actually looked like real things and not just kind of throwing things on a canvas anymore. Though I do believe there's a place for that in the sense of healing, because I do feel like when I need to just kind of like bleh everything out, that is when I go abstract. But then after I kind of go back to it and see what I can tease out in the sense of realism or an image or something, because I do believe that is important. There is an objectivity to beauty. There is a formula, so to speak, that is needed to be present to define beauty. And it's not just in the eye of the beholder, because I don't know, humans have kind of lost, I think, what's truly beautiful when we've pulled away from God in our society. And when we've now lived in these sterilized environments that just lack his reflection. And so I do believe that we need to pause, slow down, stop, appreciate, love those little things, those moments of beauty in our lives, and really try to focus in on just that, on what that is for us. So we're going to leave it there. Hope you've had fun listening to me ramble and rant about everything, because this is how I talk. And so thank you for joining me on the Drawn Deeper podcast. Our first issue of the Drawn Journal is almost ready. We are just waiting on the printers. We're about to drop it. So please, if you are interested in diving into more of a reflective journaling prayer time with a tie strongly into Visio Divina and Scripture, please check out our Drawn Journal. It will be at drawnpublications.com, where you can pre-order your copy. And then if you choose to support us the whole way, we will have an issue drop every 2 months with a new featured artist and with different forms of art for Visio Divina. So thank you again for listening to me ramble. I appreciate all of you very much. And I look forward to chatting with you guys next time on the Drawn Deeper podcast. Bye.